Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our next speaker, Salar Rahmanian. He's a seasoned software engineer with a strong background in Python and a deep passion for the Nix Package Manager. With over 2 decades of experience in software development, Salar currently focuses on data engineering in the San Francisco Bay Area, using Python, PySpark, and Apache Spark to optimize data pipelines. Today, Salah will enlighten us on elevating Python development with Nix Package Manager. Let's give him a warm welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Before I start, out of interest, has anyone here used Nix before? Excellent. Excellent. That's great. So if I mess anything up, do correct me. Great. Thank you, everyone, for coming to my talk. I'm Salar Rahmanian. Online, you'll find me under the alias Softinio most places, probably everywhere other than Twitter. I'm a software engineer based in the San Francisco Bay Area. I have 3 kids. I'm married. You can learn all about me on my blog, where I also have my contact information if anyone wants to keep in touch after the conference. I became a Python developer back in 2011 because I was interested to learn Django. That's how the whole Python world started for me. And then in 2018, I was sick at home from work, and I got bored, and I thought I'll try something new. And that's when I looked into Nix for the first time. And then ever since then, I've been kind of like obsessed by it, and hence this talk. hence this talk. So what I want to do is to start with a recap of a typical development lifecycle that we all follow to get our ideas from development to production. It all starts by working on our project coding on our laptop. I use a MacBook, but equally, you could be using something like Linux. Once your code is ready for the next stage, you typically push it to GitHub, as we all do. That ends up running some kind of a CI/CD pipeline that will run things like your tests and other things. And then eventually, if all that passes and you go through your release process, you'll eventually end up in a server somewhere. In most cases, in the Bay Area, on AWS, of course, yeah? Yeah. So taking a quick look at when we set up our developer's laptop, you kind of like start by having an OS. If you're lucky to get a Mac, it comes with a Mac OS. But if you get a Linux, then you have to choose which distribution and go through all that rigmarole. And then after that, you got to install your developer tools. And like on a Mac, a typical person would use a Homebrew, and then anything you don't find on Homebrew, you will go and find it and download it manually or from elsewhere. On Linux, you have the different package managers for Linux that you would typically do that. And then once you're done with that, now it's time to download your Python. And then there's a multitude of tools we have available to do that too. We have Python, which is one of the ones I've probably used the longest. Poetry is my next favorite one. PyPen I've never used. And pip tools, I've recently became aware of it. So we finally get a chance to install our Python, and then we install our Python dependencies by requirements.txt, virtualenv, or all the other tools that I mentioned already. And then, now that we've got the Python environment running on our laptops, it's time to see what services we need. Like typically with the Django application, I would need to have a Postgres database running. So then we have to set up Postgres on our laptop before we can start developing. And then, just to add to our exhaustion, when you run it in CI/CD, you kind of like have to repeat all that, right? You kind of have to repeat all that, but this time it's running on a completely different OS. It's probably inside a container on GitHub Actions or Circle CI, and it's got different intricacies that are slightly different that you need to configure and set up, and then you repeat it all again when you go to the server. But then again, it's completely. It could be Kubernetes is running it. It could be a different architecture. You've got the new M1 laptops, and then you could have Intel still what's powering your server, and a lot of repetition, and a lot of differences between the 3 environments. So like. This, I don't know, it makes me very tired. it makes me problem. So the main pain point that I've noticed in all the years of working through this cycle is that the variations between our different environments and tools have consequences. It leads to our work to be basically non-deterministic, and sometimes it's not reproducible from one environment to another. I probably should have used that meme that says it works on my laptop. But when it fails in production, yeah. Ultimately, this leads to you can't count on the reliability of the system, yeah. And fixing all these disparities, of course, you lose development time, yeah. And losing development time, oops. Yeah, my laptop went to sleep. Sorry about that. There we go. There we go. I should have put the no sleep thing on before I started. Sorry about that. So the developer time that is lost ultimately costs the company you work for money, because you've now spent it on something that doesn't directly make money, and you're late in delivering all your work, fixing all these different issues, and as well as fixing the issues, you ultimately have to have a separate configuration and setup for all these three environments. At where I work, for example, we do everything that goes to production, we use Terraform, and I don't know anything about Terraform. Locally, I'm using Homebrew, PyEnv, and so on. And even setting up Postgres is a completely different animal in the three environments. Once you set up your three environments, of course, you still have to test your environments for it to work and fix all that. Now, wouldn't it be nice if you had just a single tool that you configured once, you set up once, and it gave you a reliable deterministic system regardless of which platform or where you ran it, where you're not constantly repeating yourself? The answer to that is basically Nix. Is basically Nix. Now, what is Nix? Nix basically has three parts to it. It's ultimately a package manager. It's an expression language, and then there's Nix OS. Quickly talking about these. Nix is a package manager, as I mentioned. It's one tool, one way of building and testing everywhere, but many programming languages. It's programming language agnostic. I can't emphasize this enough, though. One tool, any programming language, build and test everywhere, deterministic, reproducible, and reliable. All that headache, it does help for that headache to go away. So what is Nix expression language? It's a functional programming language. It's a programming language that is used to add packages to Nix Package Manager. And as we know, like every programming language has its own way of building a package. Like how Python builds packages is very different to JavaScript and C or C++. You use Nix expression language to tell Nix how to build it regardless of the language, so that you as a Nix user only use it the same way, the same user experience. The language abstracts away the differences between how the packages are built. You also use the Nix expression language to determine how Nix deploys your work, your packages, and applications. It even goes as far as creating your Docker images for you if you wanted to, if you want to continue to use Docker, if you want to use the Docker. You can use it to configure your databases, your Kafkas, your services, be it running locally, be it running in your CI pipeline, or be it connecting to AWS services. It can do all that for you. And the bad news is for everyone who does Python is that it uses curly brackets. So now you're all immediately hated, right? Great. So now the last but not least, what is Nix OS? So Nix OS is a Linux variant based on Nix OS. What it does is it uses, instead of using something like apt-get that Ubuntu has, it uses Nix as its package manager. And then it uses Nix expression language to configure your Linux system so that you can just use Nix for everything. Now, you might think that you have to use Nix OS to take advantage of Nix. But you don't. Like, I mean, you can pick any of these three components and use whichever bit you want. On my laptop, I'm using Mac OS, but I've removed Homebrew from my laptop and I use Nix Package Manager. And I've gone completely OCD and crazy by managing my dot files with Nix expression language. Just picking the bits that I like. Oops, sorry. I went back and it's got the both. Okay, so now what I would like to do is switch from my slides to terminal and just do a bit of show and tell on the power of Nix and the kind of things you can do, and just to give you a glimpse of those curly brackets so that you can see why I think it solves a lot of the headaches that we endure. So let me find my terminal, and there it is. Can everyone see my terminal now? That's great, thank you. So let's go to slides, presentation. Oh, sorry, I didn't change directory. Great, great. And then, okay, so this part of my talk, I want to concentrate on four main things: Nix shell, devenv, Nix flakes, and flake templates. Everyone who's used Nix here will know what they are, so, but I'll go through each of them one by one. So let's start with Nix shell. So if we look at my terminal, you'll see that if I try to use wget as an OS application, it's not installed. And if I try to use Python, it's not installed. So all I have installed on my laptop is basically just Nix, nothing else. So I really badly need to use wget. So what I'll do is I'll do Nix shell, and then I'll do -p, and just say that I want wget. And then I click return, and then Nix now magically will create a new shell. I guess it's analogous to our Python virtual env world, right? And then now, I do have wget available to me. Now I do have wget available to me. And then similarly, if I leave it, I no longer will have it. And then similarly, if I want Python, I'll just type Python, and it will go off and get me a version of Python. It had an issue for some reason. Okay, this is why live demos aren't great. There is a bit later in my presentation that I will have Python working, so in the interest of time, I will carry on. So, yeah, as you saw, when I did that Nix command, I could install whatever package I want, be it OS or Python package, whatever I want from the package manager, and then when I exit it, it all goes away. It all goes away. And literally the command I followed is this, and you can, after the -p, specify a list of things you want installed in your environment. So then, taking this a step further, similar to virtual env, wouldn't it be nice if I could create a virtual env type shell for my Python project, where I tell it what I want for OS dependencies, what I want for Python dependencies, and what services I want it to run. So Nix lets you do that. So just doing just quickly showing that, let me just go into this directory here, and I'll go into Vim. And what you'll see here is that you can create a file called shell.nix, or one that's called default.nix. And I'll explain the difference between these two files a bit later. But typically, the structure looks like this, where the top line, you're importing the Nix Package Manager. Nix Package Manager, you can see, is basically on their GitHub repo. Everything's in a tar file, and it's got a unique commit, so you can choose which commit of the Nix Package Manager you want. And then this packages.mk shell is what creates your shell. And what build inputs is when is a list of packages you want your shell to have. And then the shell hook field is basically you can put any bash script commands in there that you want. And when the shell comes up, it will run those bash commands for you. So as an example, carrying on with my wget example, we can, actually, to save me typing, I created a file of this just so I don't have to type and delay things. Let's go to the one I typed already. You can see that I'm adding wget. I'm adding a Python linter called rough. Instead of having a requirements.txt, I'm telling it that I want you to install me Python 3 and with the following list of Python packages. And just for illustration purposes, I'll put the shell hook there. But ultimately, I'm not doing anything with the shell hook, but why not? Let's do something with it. Let's do echo hello. And then if I live here, what? Ah, he doesn't like this. Good. And then if I do that Nix shell that I did, Nix shell, but this time with the shell 1, which is the one I created, it will actually take a few minutes because the internet connection, I think, here is a bit slower than. There we go. And then now if I do Python, we will see that it does have Python installed. Because I didn't specify a version, you've got the latest one that Nix Package Manager has, which is 3.10.8. And then we can see that I now have rough installed as well, and I have wget installed, and yeah, and as you can see, it printed that bash echo statement that I put up here, but here. So now taking this one step further. Let's look at this example I did. This one, I'm installing Postgres as well, and then in the shell hook, I'm configuring Postgres to store its data in this the Postgres data directory, and I'm telling it that if the database doesn't exist, create me one. And the last line, the trap line, basically means that if I exit my shell, shut down Postgres for me. Yeah. Shut down Postgres for me. So just giving this a try. Let's see. And this one is example number 2. Great. And then now if I do a ps minus ef and grep Postgres, you see that Postgres is running. And then if I exit my shell, and I do the same ps, Postgres is no longer running. It literally had the service up and running for me to my specification, but I had to write a bash script to achieve it. And then last the demo of this Nix shell that I want to just quickly show is that if you really would like to use Python's virtual env still, you could. I actually ran it instead of showing it to you, so let me go back and show it to you. If you really do want to run your virtual env, you can inside the shell hook just tell it to use virtual env and source it as well, just any bash script. Once you start using Nix, you probably less and less rely on virtual env, to tell you the truth, because it's kind of like creating a virtual env inside a virtual env. You got to draw the line somewhere. Java's bad enough at doing that. Yeah. Yeah. So great. So sorry. Okay. So let me go back to my slides. Yeah, so I showed you the 3 different shells, sample shells that I created. And you can have you can call the file anything you want, but as you saw when I was running it, I had to tell it what, oops. As you saw when I was running it, I had to tell it which file to run. But if you name it shell.nix or default.nix, you can just do nix shell and it will go. And what it does is it's got an order of precedence. If there's a shell.nix, it will run that. Otherwise, it will go to the default.nix to run it. It's there so that for your project, you set up default.nix, and then the developer can make a copy of it, have a shell.nix, and override the default.nix. That's what it's ultimately there for, yeah? Moving on from that, so a developer in Europe decided one day during a conference, he was actually attending a Nix conference, and during the Nix conference, he was sitting there in the crowd coding away, and he thought to himself, this Nix shell thing is still too verbose. I don't really want to run Postgres and type all this, and it's still too much for me to type. So he created something called dependencies, which for local development, I'm a big fan of. And what dependencies does is that it takes a lot of this boilerplate away and makes it easy for you to create your Python environments and Postgres running and everything with minimal scripting. So to illustrate that, I mean, this slide, I've got instructions on how to install it, but I've already got it installed, so I'm not gonna do it. So if I go back one directory, and let's say I create a directory called test1, and we change directly to test1. Test1. I can do dev-env init to initialize my new project. There you go, it goes off and initializes a new project for me. We'll wait for it to run, finish running. It's downloading a bunch of things from Nix Package Manager. In the interest of time, as I've only got 5 more minutes left, what I'm going to do, oh, this is interesting, it's still, no. Let me start a, why is this? Okay, so because of the Wi-Fi here being slow, that's taking too long. So in the interest of time, what I'm going to do is go to one I prepared earlier, expecting a slow Wi-Fi. So if you look at the directory structure that creates for you, you have this file called dependencies.nix. And literally, this is the only file that is of interest to you, because like if you go to it, dependencies.nix, you'll see that it's a lot simpler. So I've defined an environment variable that I want to run in my shell. Here, it's called dependencies, that's what it defaults to, but we can call it PyBay if you want, just for demo purposes, PyBay. Oops. Let's see, PyBay. It's just a random environment variable for demo purposes. I'm saying I want an OS package installed called packages.git. When I enter the shell, it's a little bit more user-friendly. These are the bash commands I want you to run. And literally, to run Python, that's all I need to do. I just need to choose the language I want, and it supports multiple, it's language agnostic, right? So I can choose whatever language I want, tell it to enable it. If I specify a version, it will go and get me the version I want. If I don't, it will randomly, it's not random, it will pick the most recent stable one. Like right now, it will probably pick 3.10 as the most recent stable one inside Nix package, but I've specified give me 3.11 because I wanted the latest and greatest. And then when it comes to running Postgres, again, in a similar kind of syntax, all I say is give me Postgres, enable it. If I tell it what initial database I want, it will create it. If I don't, it will just create the default Postgres named database for me. And I can have other SQL scripts for creating my initial schema if I want added to it as well. All us developers like to use pre-commit to make sure that our code is, all the linters run before we commit anything. Literally, it's got all the linters for all the different programming languages are available, and you just enable it for your shell. And it's kind of like develop this menu system of basically enabling the bits you want for your development environment, yeah, which is kind of cool. But as you can see, it's significantly less verbose than the shell that you are creating. Unfortunate for me, I timed my talk badly, and I've still got half of it to go, and I've only got 2 minutes left. But what I will do is I will try to record the rest and put it online so that you can see the full demo. Because the next things that I wanted to show you, which I'll just quickly go through, it was a concept called Nix Flakes, And what Nix Flakes is basically you got Nix as your package manager. Flakes is like the equivalent of requirements.txt, which you tell it for my specific project, this is what I want you to build. And then it's that flake that gives you a development environment. It knows what to deploy in CI, it knows what to deploy in production, and it's just like one script to maintain, checked into your GitHub, that does it all. And it's even got templates where if you've got an existing Python project, like using Poetry, you literally download this template and it converts your Poetry project with all its dependencies into a Nix one, out of the box. I've only got 1 minute, right? I've only got 1 minute. Yeah, what I've got left, it's going to be harsh to cover in 1 minute, but I'll just show you for 1 minute what a flake file looks like and just talk you through it. Similar to that, similar to everything else I've shown you, you have a set of inputs. Your inputs are the Nix Package Manager. You can have your own private Nix Package Manager. So in here, you could include URLs to your own private GitHub that's packaged in Nix packages. Then on line 10, I'm telling it, support all these systems for me. I want it to run on Mac M1, Mac Intel, the same Linux variations. And I'm telling it that I want you to build me a package that's running Python 3.9, and the name of my package is PyBay, and these are my Python dependencies. And instead of requirements.txt, I would literally list all my Python dependencies I want here. And that my project, its root is the root directory of the GitHub, but I could put, if you've got a source as src as your root, you could change this to source. And then when you deploy your code, you need to tell it, do you have a binary? Like, what do I run? So then you have this app idea where you tell it, using the package I installed, this is how I run it. So you can see how this is the name of the package, and this is telling it how to run it when you're deploying something to production. And then last but not least, before I get thrown off the stage, this is how you define your dev shell, similar to that dev env I showed you. Here I could put Postgres stuff, everything, and then when you're coding, when you go into there, it magically creates all that for you without you having to manage PyEnv or anything else. And that's it. And apologies for running over time, and I'll record something online
Thank you so much,
for you to have a look for the rest of the talk I was going to give. Thank you so much.
Thank you.